Welcome back to Pride in Politics for a very special edition. Today's episode features PA Senate District 5's State Senator Joe Picozzi from Northeast Philadelphia. In today's episode, we cover a wide-ranging array of topics, everything from his personal life to his college education to education here in Pennsylvania, his stances on the new budget proposal by the governor, from legalizing marijuana to raising the minimum wage. We also talk about a new brand of politics, a special kind of campaign that he runs called the Politics of Possible. We want to thank Senator Picozzi for spending about an hour and a half with us to come and discuss these topics with us. Now, without further ado, let's get right into the episode. Senator Picozzi, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Welcome to Pride in Politics.
Thanks for having me. I want to ask, why did you decide to reach out?
So we noticed you followed us on Instagram, or we followed you. I don't really know how it quite went, but we saw the opportunity. We realized, you're a young guy. You like to utilize social media. We're like, let's take a shot in the dark. So we reached out, we DM'd you, and you got right back to us, which was not expecting at all. And then, you were like, let's do it. So we were 100% in. We're excited to have you. And we're going to talk a lot about that, specifically your youth and what that brings. So let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, what you do.
Sure. My name's Joe Picozzi, born and raised in Northeast Philadelphia. My dad was a Philly firefighter for 40 years. My mom was an occupational therapist and then went back to work after she raised me and my sister, became a special educator. We've been in the Northeast for over 50 years. And my story, I guess in some ways it's just like anybody else's, right? Normal family, 2 kids, went to Catholic school. And I have just so many fond memories of the Northeast, what it always was. And it's my home. Like, I can't imagine settling down really anywhere else. And, for me, I guess my story, the long and short of it, at least how I got here, is seeing how much the Northeast had changed and feeling like I really wanted to do something about it. And I don't know how much you probably did look a little bit into the lore, but I faced a lot of pressure to not pursue this. For my own party, they basically said, no, we don't want to run anyone, this kind of thing. And I went for it anyway. No money, no resources, wasn't even endorsed by the Republican Party of Philadelphia. And, I built my own team of just mostly young people. I like to joke young people who were so new that we didn't know that we didn't have a chance to win. we didn't know it was impossible. Yeah. But we went out there and we're just with the people, knocking doors, meeting people, going to every event we got invited to. And it transforms your life too. Just meeting so many people, hearing their stories. And that led me to serve in the state Senate, where I've been for just over a year now. Yeah.
And congratulations. You hit your 1-year anniversary a little bit ago.
Yeah,
so
just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So kind of talk to us about this kind of new era of politics. I think you branded it the Politics of Possible.
Yeah.
But also your campaign was, I think you called it a campaign of service.
Yeah.
Which is something I think the campaign of service aspect isn't necessarily new. It's something that I think we've seen in previous decades. I think in the 60s and 70s with Nixon and Kennedy. You remind me a lot of both of them in the sense that your politics don't define you as a person. Instead, you separate yourself from that, and you separate those around you from their politics. You still respect people across the aisle, something that I think is missing especially in our national politics, which is refreshing to see. So kind of talk to us about this new era of the Politics of Possible and a campaign of service.
Yeah. Well, just going off of what you just said, I totally just look at people as people, right? Young, old, Democrat, Republican. I'm like, what are your intentions? Why are you in this? What brought you to this? And I really have approached this position of there's nobody that I can't find common ground with, right? It doesn't matter right wing, left wing. And I think, and we could talk more about that, this idea that you can take people's worldviews and put them on some sort of linear, 2-dimensional line and act like that's meaningful. It's no, people have so many different worldviews. There's so much that shapes how you view the world, how you approach public policy, how you approach public life. This is the line, the silly line. It's totally outdated. And I think we need to move past that. The things I campaigned on, first off, the thing was such a long shot, right? I said to myself from day one, it's this campaign itself has to be something that's good, inherently good, right? That win or lose, it's better for the Northeast that this happened, that people had a choice, right? Not just, they weren't just told by party bosses, this is what's happening, right? That people had the opportunity to say, hey, I want to go on a different path. 2, that it was going to be something that just is good for the community, right? That we're giving back to the community, even with no resources. We're going to still pick up trash. We're going to go canvass this neighborhood, and then we're going to do a 30-minute trash cleanup of this Blade area that we saw. And we've been continuing the trash cleanups, ever since. Because it's like, that's one of the things you can do that's concrete, that's material. It's like, this is what this place looked like 3 hours ago. This is what it looks like right now. And you probably heard me talk about the importance of tackling blight and broken windows and that sort of thing. When I think about a new kind of politics, I mean, we all grew up in this world where we saw the political leaders just bickering with each other. And it turned into this sort of blame game, gotcha politics, this like knife fighting, silliness that turns people off. Right. And that's part of the reason this podcast got me excited, because I'm like, hey, like pride in politics. Yeah, it's hard to find pride in politics sometimes. Right. It's hard to look at this thing and say, I'm proud of this system. Yeah. Now, you clearly seem to be somebody who's very literate in history.
Try to.
Yeah, no, clearly.
I try to.
and when we take a step back and you recognize that we're the heirs of this 250-year-old project, right? A project that nobody thought was going to work, right? That people, I mean, all around the world said, okay, yeah, you're going to do a republic. Those don't have a great track record. Yeah. And here we are approaching the 250th anniversary, right? We are the heirs to something that's beautiful, that's elegant. And ultimately, it's on us if it's going to continue. And there's real concerns about what the future of the thing looks like. I don't think it can continue the way it's been going. I really don't. And I think it's incumbent upon our generation to pioneer a new kind of politics, right? A new way of doing this. Something that says, we're not trying to play this partisan blame game. We're not trying to play this gotcha politics. We're trying to say, where's the common ground, right? And where can we just agree? Where can we meet as people, as human beings, right? A politics that's human-centric. And that's even more important now, even in the last 2 years, as we're starting to see almost a rival to mankind pop up with artificial intelligence. We need to keep a politics of humanity, right? That's soul-driven, that's driven by love, that's animated by concern. And the last thing I'll say on the politics of the possible, and it goes back to the trash cleanups, is like, okay, well, what can we actually do, right? What's concrete? When I took office a year ago, I tried to pick up some common sense legislation, things like transit worker safety. I'm like, this is so common sense. I mean, who can be against this? And I will tell you this, I learned that sometimes common sense isn't always easy in Harrisburg, but that's the core of it, is that we need to build a politics that's human-centered, that ignores all the labels and the silliness, right? And just gets down right to the heart of the issue, to the soul of the issues.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what our first episode talked about with Jimmy Jasmine and Dr. Blemmings, kind of this coming together of two different sides of the equation and meeting in the middle somewhere, realizing that the politics right now aren't working. And I think you put it pretty perfectly, that we are the heirs to this 250-year thought experiment that has worked. Not without its bumps or its bruises, but still has worked. And that leads me into my next kind of thing is Gen Z. We are inheriting this right now, whether it's Maxwell Frost in the House of Representatives, or it's you in the Pennsylvania state legislature, or Gen Zers across the country in their state and local governments, even the federal government. What does this new politics look like? How does it become implemented? I mean, obviously, we're going to have to bide our time as people retire. But what are the policies that you hope to see Gen Z start to pick up in the sense of bridging this political divide?
Well, first off, you don't have to bide your time, right? Are you 21 years old?
No.
Okay. Is anyone
almost?
21? I'm 20.
Almost 21.
20. You're 21? You could be a state rep. You could be a state rep this time next year if you want, right? So when you think about the founders, right, to get back to that, Thomas Jefferson was 31 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, right? You go to the ballot trend, James Monroe was 19, right? Hamilton was an incredibly young man. Madison was an incredibly young man, right? So it really was these entrepreneurial young people who stepped up and said, well, we're going to do something, right? They weren't waiting their turn per se. So I don't think that I think that there really isn't time to wait to do the waiting game. And let's just be clear, it's not like a lot of these folks in power seem to be ready to just pass the thing, right? Some of them get it, but they get it kind of late. So I think young people need to step up and do it, right? I mean, I asked for permission. I didn't get it. I ran anyway, right? And I ran because I was like, if I run away from this and I don't do it, I'm always going to look back on my life and say, I had a chance to do something. And, I went down with the pressure. So to push back on that, go do it, right? If you feel that calling in your heart, and it doesn't have to be running for office, right? There's just so many ways to be civically engaged. Like the four of us in this room, look what you did, right? you guys started, you said, here's a problem of polarization, of trying to help young people in your campus understand what's going on in politics, to humanize what's happening, right? And you saw a clear problem. You told me a story about, on election night, you're doing the live coverage, you found this passion for it, and you did something. You built something. And what you're building here is going to change the way a lot of people, of your students, actually see politics. It's going to shape their viewpoints. So think about it. Like, you're already doing the thing, right? Which is pretty amazing. In terms of how I think young people can reshape it, I think we are just sick of, like, it's the impetus behind why you started this podcast, right? We're sick of this politics that sort of like LARPs as like we're fighting, and it's not actually doing those things, right? It's not actually solving the problems. I think there's a craving for a politics that just at least is just super open and honest and just real, right? And that's an important thing too, is saying, like, this is what I want to do. This is why I'm running into a wall, in Harrisburg to do it, right? And just being very transparent with people. We're seeing that in New York with Mount Dami saying, hey, I wanted to have all these programs, but we're in a $12 billion deficit, right? And I admire that he's just going out and saying, like, look, like, here's why I can't do some of the things I told you I want to do, right? There's a real fiscal problem, and the way he's being very open with his constituents. Because I think we're going to look at isn't like parties and trends. It's like, who's the person, right? What are they all about? What's their motivation for doing this? And, like, how are they keeping me in the loop with what's going on too? Like, how are the electeds communicating with the electorate, and how are they communicating with each other? So I'm excited, though. I mean, I think there are a lot of, young people who are in office, young people who are thinking about running for office. But ultimately, I think we got to kind of move, because the challenges are moving so quickly. And I think we need some more young people. Like, I don't want to be the youngest senator for much longer, if I can help it.
I was going to say, yeah, and kind of going to that point. I mean, you're 30 years old. You're the youngest senator in state history. You unseated a historically Democratic seat for over 2 decades. It's historic, and it is in the sense of unprecedented. And I think that's kind of the politics that, with Zoran Mamdani in New York City, an unprecedented Democratic socialist mayor you've never seen before, kind of championing a cause, but it's because he's authentic and a person that he's there. And I think it's the exact same reason why you won in Northeast Philly. It's because you were authentic and you were there for the community, so the community came out for you. And I think that's really important, that Gen Z needs to consider that we can't just sit there and be typically a common theme in our generation is we're a little bit, hey, where's my handout? Where's my handout? In the sense of, remember where you come from, who you are, and make sure you give back to that. And I think you did that so eloquently, both in your campaign, but also in the continuance of your support of your community, still being in the Senate. I do want to move to now your record as a legislature.
Sure.
You're the chair of Urban Affairs and Housing, which is incredible. And then you're also the vice chair of the Law Committee as well. Talk to us about Philadelphia and how specifically, I think it's kind of perfect that you are the chair of Urban Affairs and Housing.
Yeah.
Kind of talk to us about your role there, and then talk to us about kind of the initiatives that committee, but also the legislation that's come out of the committee, how it's going to affect not only Philadelphia, Northeast Philly specifically, but also across the state.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting committee assignments for me. I'll start with law and justice quickly. A lot of my focus has been recognizing crimes that aren't being prosecuted and trying to do something about it. There's a lot of work on cannabis and what the future of that looks like. We're not sure where that's going to shake out, but I did sponsor legislation for a cannabis control board to regulate these Delta 8s and things like that. But it really is an important assignment for me to be able to actually have some sort of input where, things aren't happening right in the city. It's for the state to come in and say, hey, these are problems, right? With housing, I mean, this is a huge issue for us, especially as young people, right? And I was really excited to see this become a higher tier issue, because it barely was mentioned last year in the governor's budget address. But now we see Mayor Parker with Home, right? And we had met earlier this week. We have a good working relationship. She's really making housing a priority. And now so is the governor. So we have our own package of housing bills that I introduced along with some of my colleagues just a few weeks ago. And it's really perfect timing. Now that it seems like this is the moment for real action on housing. So we're getting ready to move a lot of legislation through the committee. My approach on it has been, okay, well, I don't want to take away the ability of communities to have some self-determination and what their community is going to be, right? The Northeast, are any of you from Northeast Philadelphia?
Jersey Shore kid.
Right,
Jersey Shore kid.
We're sort of our own unique, microcosm, right? Like, parts of the Northeast feel a little bit more suburban. People want to keep the neighborhoods, at least the character of it, a certain way. But I want to incentivize municipalities to build more and to allow more development. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the thrust of my package, is trying to cut the red tape, right, to incentivize more building, trying to incentivize really carrots rather than sticks for more building. Because a lot of the problem too with the market is that there's so much red tape for anyone who says, hey, I want to build something, that they end up waiting 2 years just to get approval for a project. And the money's all tied up, and so I rather say, if it's a no, great. Let us know quickly so we can move the money and do another development project, because there's a time value of money too, right? So it's to incentivize people to build more. And I think that's the fundamental. I think everyone who's engaged in this issue recognizes that ultimately it's supply, that we need a bigger housing supply so folks like us can get on the asset ladder. I mean, for me, myself, like housing chair Joe Picozzi, I'm about to downsize to a smaller studio apartment because it's too tough right now, between groceries, between bills, that, if I can save a few $100s a month by having an even smaller studio, right? And we mentioned earlier, I'm just so out in the community, I'm barely there. I'd rather do that, right? But that's not sustainable in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think not only that, I mean, I know for myself, like, and I think I can speak for all of us in this room, there is kind of this fear that we'll never be able to own our own home, that it's not going to ever be a reality for us. And I don't think it helps that these huge asset corporations, BlackRock, Vanguard, are buying these single-family homes and then renting them back to the very people who were applying for mortgages to buy them. Talk to us about kind of the solution to that problem. Obviously, there is a lack of supply of homes, but also talk to us, how can Pennsylvania itself, I know obviously the federal government's trying to pass legislation on that, but what can the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania do, and how can you as committee chair kind of help push that through?
So we're exploring legislation on institutional investors. I don't want to put a firm policy out there, because there are, like, look, constitutionally, you have a right to go buy things, right? You have a right to private property. So it's like, how do you navigate that? We have a similar challenge with the out-of-state absentee landlords, right? So you run up against, essentially the Commerce Clause in the Constitution. So figuring out how you navigate that, what safeguards can be put in, is a thorny, like, policy-wise challenge. But to take a step back, right, when you talk about these financial institutions, these institutional investors, and then we talk about the affordability crisis, the crisis of the American dream, the crisis of the middle class, these things go hand in hand. I mean, let's just be real here. Our future has in a lot of ways been sort of mortgaged by massive, powerful financial institutions. And what concerns me is, like, America is a wealthy country inherently, right? Between our natural resources, between our access to global shipping, like, we are built to be a prosperous country. But are these banks, are these powerful institutions focused on expanding the wealth of America, right? The pie is growing, that whole thing we've heard for years, or are they trying to extract wealth out of the middle class? And look at the world we're heading into. We're heading into essentially a debt and credit economy that is completely unnerving to me. And it's not sustainable. It's fundamentally not sustainable. We need an ownership economy where people actually have means, they have assets that are growing, that grow over time. Nobody here in this room is asking to be super ultra rich, right? I'm not. We're just asking for the basics. An economy that can provide me the ability to own a home, to raise a family, to send them to a school, to maybe go on a vacation a year, right? Simple things. And we have this financial system, in my opinion, that's sort of decoupled from that, right? And something that I think about, I'm not on the banking committee, but I think we need a lot of more smaller banks, community banks. It's so hard to even start a bank today. So much of our wealth of America's wealth is tied up in these elite financial institutions that are just so far removed from the people. And it's like, when you're just buying homes and sitting on them, that's not economically productive activity, right? We have big banks so that they can work on big financial transactions, so they can work with big businesses, not so that they can skew the market for single family, homeowners. Fundamentally, it's not productive economically. So, I mean, these are challenges that I can't fully take on as a state senator, but it's sort of how I'm viewing it, is that we're losing our future to a lot of really powerful institutions that don't seem to actually get what I think their role is in society, which is to facilitate large transactions between large companies.
Yeah, and it's refreshing to hear that a politician actually say, I can't actually do something like that. Like, at least you're being honest and not selling someone a bunch of lies, like so many of our politicians do.
They do. Like, no, I know. It's like I've got colleagues, people run on federal issues for state office, and it's like, you can't do that. Like, I wish I could sit here and say, Sean, like, as your state senator, I'm gonna I'm gonna take on the bags, or I'm gonna be Theodore Roosevelt or something. It's like that's not what state senators do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being honest. That's nice. I am going to shift our conversation to something that a little interesting. Do you want to talk about SEPTA?
I met with them this week.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So I would say the first time I became aware of you was sitting in one of my classes. We do an advocacy day for ACUP, Association of Independent Colleges and Universities of Pennsylvania, a lobbying day. And I think we dropped a folder off to your office. You weren't. The Senate wasn't in session. The House was, though. So we met with a couple House members. But the first time I heard your name again outside of that class was Governor Shapiro's giving a speech. And then I hear, if you're from Philly, call the 5th Senate District, Joe Picozzi, and tell him to fund SEPTA. That was the first time I heard you. And I'm like, that name sounds familiar. And I go back and I'm like, oh, that was one of the guys I delivered a folder to. Okay, cool. Let's talk about it. So what was the thing with SEPTA? The thing, because it's more than just the thing.
Sure.
But let's call it the thing. And then let's talk about your relationship with the governor and then how it's kind of evolved to what it is today.
No. Well, you're going back to the governor's comment. I wish he would called me, right, and said, hey, what can we do to work on this together? Because I'm in a unique position where I at least sort of understand, the concerns, and the fundamental concern of a lot of my colleagues was you're asking millions of people who are never going to use these systems to fund them, and we're essentially to deliver a bailout. And so to put the legislature in a position where it was give us hundreds of millions of dollars every year recurring, or else we're going to hurt the city, right? That's not the position you want to be in. What I want to see is an investment, not a bailout. What I want to see is a better future for mass transit, and not just in Philly, but all across the state. I want to see a vision, right? It's a lot easier for me to sell, this is an investment. This is how we're going to make this system better, right? And that was sort of the approach I took with my accountability legislation, was saying, hey, first off, we need to know where the money's going, right? Because that's one of the big problems here is that we can write them a big check, but then we have no say whatsoever in what happens with it. And you and I both know there's a long history of questionable capital projects and questionable spending that it just undermines the case. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard SEPTA spend $30,000 on soft pretzels when I'm trying to push for this funding. So it was a difficult situation to navigate as a freshman lawmaker. And ultimately, I think, certain actors turned it into a, kind of partisan food fight when they lost sight of this is about trying to build a better mass transit system for the future. On the relationships you bring up, so I did meet with SEPTA this week and met with them a bunch of times, and we're continuing to develop that relationship. But I'm not one of these people that when the bureaucracies in Philadelphia or elsewhere say, "Well, give us a bunch of money," and I say, "Absolutely, here's your check." Right? It's okay. Well, where's the money going? What are we doing with it? What are the investments? What's the future of this agency? What's the vision for this? And how can we make sure the money is being spent in sensible, proper ways? There's a lot of things that the mass transit systems can do to bring in more revenue, particularly from advertising, land use, naming rights deals. I want to see more of that. When you're saying, Joe, invest in me, you have to show what you're doing, right? The governor, he was in my district today. I spoke with him because, looking back, it's like, oh, you should call me. It's like, all right, well, I want to work with pretty much anyone to come up with a real, actual solution to this. Just saying, well, let's just give everyone a check. That's not the answer, right? When you look at the last time we did this, it's called Act 89. You're probably familiar with it in 2013. It was the last major transportation infrastructure deal in Pennsylvania history. It's a big, thick piece of legislation that looked at all modes of transportation, roads and bridges, highways, mass transit. I think it's time for something like that, where we say, okay, what are we doing to invest in transportation all across Pennsylvania? Mass transit, micro transit, highways, roads, air transit. That's where I think we need to be. And I think that the leaders in every caucus and the leaders in the executive branch need to come together and work constructively so we don't end up in another situation like that again. The last thing I'll say on it, and I think it made it very difficult for everyone involved, is that this was a very protracted budget process. And putting the legislature in a position where it's like, well, you need to solve this one issue now, you ended up with a lot of unsatisfactory proposals. And I was the only senator to vote for both the kind of Republican proposal and the Democratic proposal, but I find them frankly both inadequate. I hope that we can work together to deliver something far, far, far better that sets us up for a better future.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I can't really add much more than that. I mean, I think that that sense of like, hey, let's sit and talk about this is something lost in politics, and it's once again going back to one of our very first points we said it's going back to the human centric idea of politics and like let's talk about this. I think that's refreshing. On the subject of budget, since you brought it up, the governor just gave his 2026 fiscal year 2026-2027 budget address to both houses of the legislature, proposing upwards of, I believe it's $56 billion.
53.
53. No. Sorry, 53. $53 billion, which does ask for legislation that raises the minimum wage to $15 an hour, something that my home state of New Jersey has done, New York, Ohio, they all have higher minimum wages, so he's asking to kind of match at least some of them or meet in the middle somewhere. And also to legalize cannabis use, adult cannabis use specifically. Let's tackle one at a time. Let's go. Sure. The $15 minimum wage. What are our takes on this so far? I know that the House of the Legislature has already passed legislation to send it to you guys. So where are we with that?
I don't know if you saw, it was like the only Republican, or one of the only Republicans that stood up and clapped when he talked about raising the minimum wage. And so our minimum wage in Pennsylvania is essentially the federal minimum. And it's been a long, long time since we've raised it. My view is that it's overdue, that we should do something, and we should raise the minimum wage. I've talked to business owners in my district that always said, listen, like, if we jump right to 15, it's going to kill us. So I think it has to be something, it's either a smaller increase that goes up with inflation, right, or goes up with the CPI, or something that's phased in. And there's other options we can explore. But I think you don't want to jump, essentially double it overnight, because you're going to put a lot of people out of work. Mm-hmm. So that's my concern. So it's not a question of how do we raise it. My view is we do. It's how do you go about it, right? How do you go about it? And that's something that actually he brought that up with me today. But yeah, so it's something I think that we need to continue working on. It's something that might be difficult to pursue a path, but I think jumping right to 15 would be very difficult. Yeah. So let's focus on what we talked about before, the politics of the possible. There was a proposal in 2016 to raise the minimum wage to, I believe it was $10.50 an hour, and then to index it with the CPI. And it was a Republican proposal in the Senate. Had that been actually enacted into law, and it wasn't because folks said it didn't go far enough. Had that been enacted, the minimum wage would already be above 15 right now, and it would have been phased in a way that businesses could have adjusted. So that's sort of where my head's at on the issue. I'm very close with Senator Tartaglione that this is a huge priority for her. But yeah, I think there's a lot of space to work on this issue, but I think we have to move away from the sloganeering on it, right? And actually have thoughtful policy and look at the nonprofits who are going to be affected by it, right? I mean, there are nonprofits that if we just jump right to 15, they won't be able to sustain their operations, period. So I think we need, similar to the transit issue, similar to other issues like housing, we need a really thoughtful sort of deep perspective on how we go about that.
Yeah. And I know, like, for example, in New Jersey, they phased it in. Mm-hmm. It was, our minimum used to be, I think it was like $12.25 or something like that. It went up like $1.50 to like $13.75, then to $14.50, and then eventually to $15. Where it stands, I think we might be raising it again. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that, but there's a chance. I read somewhere the other day. But it wasn't immediate, and everybody's like, I'm getting paid $15 an hour. No, because it would kill this. Like you're saying, it kills small businesses. Yeah. These big corporations, they could afford it, but smaller businesses, that's not necessarily fair to them.
I'll say this too. We really need to focus on growing the economy and creating more jobs, right? McDonald's in my neck of the woods is paying like $17, $18, $19 an hour, right? That's the effective minimum wage. So we have to focus on creating more jobs that pay better, right? And ultimately, family-sustaining careers. This is why I'm such a big proponent of career technical education, of the trades, right? Of entrepreneurship and making it easier to start a business. Ultimately, I don't think anyone who's serious about policy making wants people making minimum wage for their entire career, right? We want people to get on a career track where their earnings grow and expand over time, right? That's the goal. And that's one of the most productive ways we could be focusing our energy.
Mm-hmm. So now to cannabis and legalizing it. I know when we were there in April, we saw a lot of senators or representatives had like little legalized weed now signs in their windows walking around the rotunda, whether it was on the House side or the Senate side. Your take on this? I know, for example, if you drive over the Walt Whitman Bridge, you just see the Brotherly Bud sign that says, come to Jersey off of Exit 0. We got your weed here. Right. And you guys are losing out on a lot of tax revenue. It is true. I think the budget proposal I was looking at, the governor argues, I think it's $200 million. might be more than that, honestly, with how much, people do enjoy the recreational cannabis use, whether it be in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, or just across the state. There are also medicinal purposes as well. I know it's legally medicinal wise, but if you're using it recreationally, you are losing out on a lot of tax dollars. What is your kind of take on how do you guys get to this point? Because the federal government isn't even enforcing the no cannabis law anymore. They stopped that under the Obama administration, and it hasn't been reinstituted since.
You know what the governor called this issue in his speech on Tuesday? He called it cannabis reform, which is a new way of presenting this, right? And I thought that was a really good way to talk about the issue, because the reality is that cannabis is here, right? And people are using it. And we're also seeing these products in gas stations and in other places that are sort of essentially like augmented hemp, right? That's incredibly, we don't know what's in it. The Inquirer did a study. They tested 10 different products, and 8 of them actually had substances that are not legal in them, right? And there's no regulation. So it's incredibly dangerous, I think, for Pennsylvanians. So my view is it all comes down to exactly how we go about it and what the actual legislation looks like, because there's some risk too. Right now I think it's about 25 states have pursued adult use legislation, and it's a whole kaleidoscope of how it's shaken out in different states. You go to New York City, for example, and essentially the legal market didn't really replace the black and gray market, right? People are buying it at head shops. They're buying it. People are literally selling it on street corners. Well, that doesn't make things better, right? That makes things actually worse. I don't think people want it, in their communities in that way. But there's also a reality of, okay, it's out there. What does a strong, sensible adult use regulatory scheme look like? And I've been engaged in that conversation in a lot of ways. For me, a lot of money needs to go into enforcement, right? What do we do with the revenue? We need to make sure that we're enforcing crackdowns on the if there is a legal adult use market on the black market, right? Because if we have a legal market but people don't buy from it, well, then what's the point, right? We're not actually going to get the revenue. We're not going to make communities safer, and we just enabled something that's bad. I think we have to actually look at what's in these products too. The potency of cannabis that's widely consumed has gone up and up and up and up to the point where it's becoming something very different than what it was, even 10 years ago, right? 5 years ago. So I think we have to be thoughtful about, well, what are we actually putting on the shelves, right? Now, medicinal is different because if you have Parkinson's or a really serious medical condition, you might need a hyperpotent product for your treatment, literally, and that's fine. But recreational is different. So we have to be thoughtful about what's on the shelves. What are we stocking? How is it being brought to the consumer? Are we looking at delivery? The states that do delivery have more revenue, right? So it has to be done in a really thoughtful way. I'm pretty engaged in that conversation, particularly with my role in law and justice. I think the easiest, most straightforward first step is to get some of these kind of gas station, Delta 8, THCA products off the streets and demonstrate that the state government actually has an ability to enforce and regulate this before we pursue the creation of an entirely new legal adult use industry in Pennsylvania.
That's a very thorough plan. I don't think I've ever had somebody talk about cannabis or weed much ever. That was actually refreshing to hear, because I know when they did it in Jersey, it was a process. It was not just overnight. All of a sudden, everybody's smoking dope. Happy 420. Right. It took a while to get there. And
we want to make sure we're not enabling public consumption, right? You don't want your neighborhood to smell like this. We don't want people smoking in the parks. We have to really make sure this is done in a way where we have strong enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it's a common. Once again, it goes back to what we said earlier.
Yeah.
It's a common sense policy step to go forward. Coming up on Pride in Politics, Senator Picozzi and I discuss higher education funding and education funding in the new budget proposal. Stay tuned. So the new budget, $53 billion. It is, I believe, rating the rainy day fund from what I've seen. It needs to, at least in order to have the constitutional requirement to have a balanced budget. It does include some increase for funding and education, but it doesn't really increase the quality of education.
Thank you for saying that.
Well,
Let
let me finish. In the sense of higher education. So, for example, A-Cup students, Associated Independent College Universities of Pennsylvania students, are over 58, I believe it's 52% of all college students. That's including big state schools like Penn State, Pitt, and FIA schools as well. A-Cup doesn't receive the same level of funding, so their tuition rates are higher. They receive it more from the federal government, and the FIA grants aren't always taken to A-Cup schools, or instead they're taken to FIA schools, or they're taken to other types of schools. The state government is, in fact, missing out on a huge opportunity to fund A-Cup and A-Cup schools, to give them the opportunity to produce even more equity in education, the opportunity from kids from inner cities, low-income areas, historically oppressed communities, to come to college at a very low cost and obtain an education. It's not really, this budget isn't proposing anything that truly hammers home that idea of reinforcing secondary or higher education for A-Cup schools, but it, as always, reinforces the idea of more funding for FIA and state schools. Traditionally makes sense. State school wants to fund it. The state government wants to fund a state school. But this budget doesn't address the issue that schools like Widener or even Villanova or Kutztown or things like that, these schools that are A-Cup schools, aren't receiving the same level of funding, so students aren't going to necessarily go to these schools. What is kind of the way we could see a budget maybe be more equitable in that?
Well, first I'll take a step back. College has gotten way too expensive. It has gotten way, way, way too expensive. Because you're setting up so many young people to be at a point of just being in debt forever. I've got student loans myself. I'm not really sure how I'm going to really pay them off. I mean, it's going to take, that's what part of the reason I'm downsizing apartments to a smaller studio apartment, right? So I can keep putting more money and trying to just tackle the debt. So we got into a situation where everyone gets pushed into college. Everyone's like, go to college. And it's a good thing. I'm glad I went. But it's very hard especially for very young people to be cognizant of the debt situation they're walking into. So I think the student debt issue is something that's really it's almost like a structural risk to society, right? When you have a whole generation of people who are pretty much put in debt for forever, and the ROI in the college degree isn't exactly what it used to be, right? If we were having this conversation in 1986, it's like huge ROI. Now it's not quite the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I think we need a really thoughtful look at, what is the role of higher ed? How is it? What role is it going to play in society? How is with the state's relationship with it, right? What is the government's relationship with it? What are we doing for, I think more scholarships for, gifted and talented students, people you really want. And it's like, you absolutely need to go to college, right? Or the thing you want to do, there's no other alternative. Another thing I've been really thinking about is like, we really want to try to create something where it's like people can go do AmeriCorps, do something else for a year or two, figure out really who you are, what you want, before throwing them into a situation where it's essentially you're investing, $50,000 plus in an opportunity to go learn and build yourself for the future. But people may not know what exactly they want to do. And there's other ways for people to help, grow as a person, early in life and figure out what they want before they go take out that investment. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think we need a really, kind of comprehensive, take a step back and look at like, what are we really doing here? Because the university system was built in a different world, in a different economy. Like my parents commuted to Temple, right? And it was so affordable. I mean, it was so affordable. You could pay your college tuition with your summer job. It's like, how do we get back to that? And the thing you started off by saying, which is something I think a lot, especially with the latest budget and the big investments we made in K through 12. Mm-hmm.
Which is, I'm going to cut you off, sorry, very refreshing, because so much of what people see of investing in education is higher education. And you're taking away from K through 12, which is fundamentally the most important education one can receive. College is great. I will champion the college education as an example of, hey, somebody it worked for. It doesn't work for everybody, but it was actually really nice to read the budget and see that we're investing here in Pennsylvania, at least, more into K through 12 education. And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
But it's very refreshing to see, because I come from Jersey, where education's kind of the marquee thing. Everybody funds education. We love education. We have some of the best schools in the country, and I'm glad for that. But it's good to see that other states want to match that, which is nice to see that now, okay, maybe Jersey's going to get a little bit more competitive, and maybe we're going to invest more in this area rather than pushing STEM. And hey, we're going to push the trades because Pennsylvania's kicking our butt in the trades. It's nice to see that you guys are now starting to make, I think, the education funding a question and almost a competition to kind of bring up the quality of education around you guys as well. So did not mean to cut you off there.
In 2 points, also not just K through 12, but early childhood education, right? You're like your 3s, your 4s, your 5s. Why is it that just gets separated? And they say that's kind of this other thing, and education starts when you're 5 years old. Those are some of the most important years for socialization, for learning how to get along with people, for learning how to talk to each other, for learning, just basic, not to mention even like early intervention, for special needs students. So, I think we need to make sure that early childhood education is part of that conversation as well. But we also need to remember that education isn't just, a check and a dollar amount. We can spend millions and millions of dollars and not see an improvement in the outcomes and the quality of life for students. We need to be thinking about how we're educating the whole person, right? And you can't just say, well, we wrote a check and now we fixed education, right? There has to be a really sort of nitty gritty, what's working? How can we get to a place where people are learning to read? Learning to read. We have a struggle in literacy in the city of Philadelphia and across Pennsylvania, right? So what are the actual like policies? What are the tools? How are we not just investing in education, but improving, fixing, reforming education? Because that's one of the things that I think Philadelphia needs the most. I think Pennsylvania needs the most. I think that's how we build ourselves for the future, quite literally. But we can't just be, here's the money. It has to be, okay, like how are we building an education system for the 21st century, right? For a different world. The kids right now, in grade school, they're going to be working jobs that don't exist yet. Seriously. And so how are we building an economy and an education system that prepares people for an economy that we don't even know what's going to be? Well, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure they're going to need to know how to read and write. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be part of those jobs. I'm pretty sure they're going to need to know how to live in a society, right? How to work with other people, how to have constructive relationships, how to talk to people, how to follow directions, how to turn things in on time, right? But I think at some level we need to focus on the basics. But yeah, I guess that's my core point, is that we can't equate just a big check with, and we succeeded, right? We have to look at the outcomes and what are the policies that we can make to improve outcomes.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because I feel like it used to be, at least in my education going through K through 12, was in Jersey specifically, because their idea of, okay, where's our results? It was everybody had this one huge test. It used to be called the Park, then it'd be NJ something else. But what it was you sat in a classroom and you learned to take a test one day in April. And then May and June, you were just sitting there like, all right, what are we going to learn now? Like, it was not to knock my teachers. My teachers are some of the best people on the planet. And I will say it started to shift in high school. You really saw a shift in Jersey in high school. And it's followed because the education funding here in Pennsylvania has increased in those years. And I think that's kind of Jersey's realized we need to start to get competitive here. Right. Teaching our kids to take a test is not showing that we actually know what we're doing. And I think that that's starting to see in high schools specifically, as across Jersey. I'm equating it to home, but I'm sure that you guys can find a better way to do it. And I think modeling it after states, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, California, schools, states that have typically had highest ranking schools by academic outcomes, not sitting for taking a test for 6 hours a day and cool, you got a good grade on it. Like it's sitting and fixing education isn't something that happens overnight. And it's not something that can just be done with, okay, cool, take a test, then you get your check. No, it's how can we see material outcomes? And that's, I think, what's important. You went to Georgetown.
I did, yeah.
Talk about that.
Okay.
Was it Georgetown or George Washington?
I went to George Washington for a year, transferred to Georgetown.
Okay.
So you really did your homework.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember.
That's esoteric lore.
So the reason I asked that is because I watched. What were you on that I watched? It wasn't I think it was the. Thank you. I think it was the Loft, and then you were talking. It was when you sat down after. I think it was election or before. I don't know if it was before or after the election. And you sat down. I think it was 6 ABC. You kind of just talked about like the party and how it didn't support you and things like that.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned, I don't remember if it was Georgetown or George Washington. I say that because immediately after watching that interview, I turned on do you watch The Diary of a CEO?
No.
Great podcast. Give it a watch. He interviewed the CIA agent or analyst that exposed the CIA torture thing, the torture methods, blew the whistle on that, and he went to George Washington. So that's, I think, where I got that mixed up. So Georgetown, talk to us about Georgetown.
Yeah, I mean, learned a lot there. Yeah, learned a lot. I'll say this: it's very it's kind of like a town within a city.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in DC, but you're a little removed from it. You got a lot of exposure to just like the federal government and the world too. Like you were saying that you love international politics, and I do too. Honestly, we don't do any international stuff really in the Senate. I mean, a little bit like trade missions with other countries, like a little bit, but it's 99% like local domestic policy. But did give me appreciation for the world, right? Because you go to school with people from like all over the world, right? And so you just like
Georgetown,
there's almost like an expectation to be fluent in geopolitics, and that's cool. Even though I wasn't like in the SFS, I was a government major, but that's cool. I'm still really interested in the world and in foreign service. And then even working on Capitol Hill too, it's almost like another kind of college experience in the sense that you're meeting people from all across the country, right? Because I mean, there's 436 members of the House, right? And so they're all from different districts, right? They're all from these different places. So you're just like hanging out, meeting all these people, and they're interested in politics and government, right? It's kind of how they got there. But that was a really cool experience. I mean, just it broadens your mind a little bit because the world is so different. But even being in the Senate, I mean, like, you in the legislature, you meet people from parts of the state that I've never been to, with views that are different than mine, and you get to learn from them too and how they see things. Yeah. And that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, at college, I mean, it wasn't that different from everyone else, but there's intense campus politics at Georgetown, as you can imagine. Like everyone thinks they're going to be something. I served in the student senate for 1 year and was like, this is too intense for me. I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, did you intern for McCarthy? Did I see that?
I worked for him.
When he was speaker?
No, way before that.
Okay, before that. All
I
right.
worked for, he was the whip when I interned and majority leader when I worked for him.
So how does, this is actually something I do want to ask. What is that like? So I think it was in that same interview, you had said something about you were the guy who just grabbed coffee. But like, I mean, when you work for a whip or a majority leader, there's got to be more than just grabbing coffee. Like totally. Talk to us about that.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, so first I'll give you a little bit of lore. Like I interned there my sophomore year. And it was like I interned Tuesdays, Thursdays, right? And it's a 12-week internship. So I basically said to myself, I'm like, I've got 24 days to make an impression, right? And so any little task they gave me, I just like try to knock it out of the park, right? Show up early, that kind of thing. And to the point where 2 years later, when I was getting ready to graduate, they called me and said, hey, like, you're looking for a job, right? And that's how I think for young people starting out, like that's how you really should approach like every internship, every opportunity you get. Is like, even if this task is making coffee, right? It's like, I'm going to knock it out of the park. You know what I mean? Like every little thing, because that's how you stand out. I even say to the kids I mentor, it's like, look, you're going to intern here, and someday somebody's going to see this on your resume. They're going to call me and say, how was this guy or this girl? And I'll say, one of two things. Oh yeah, they're really good, really like them. Or like, this guy, oh yeah, like you got to hire them. They were exceptional, right? Those are the two answers you're going to get. Working there, I mean, yeah, like 80% of it was, he would have a bunch of different lunches and breakfast, and you're getting the catering, and you're managing the interns, and you're, you're preparing some briefs, you're filing stuff. I mean, a lot of it is just like the keeping the trains running of the office, right? That's a lot of it. But you get to be there and see just the craziest, most interesting stuff. Like met's a generous word. I was in rooms with like heads of state, like Mohammed bin Salman came to the office one time. Like, yeah, like
just a casual effects Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia showing up.
I escorted his team from Kevin's office to McConnell's office.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. Hold on, that is crazy.
Yeah, I can still kind of smell the perfumes. Slash from Guns N' Roses was in there one time.
Whoa!
I mean, just like
you're talking to the guys that like love rock and roll now. Hold on, Slash just shows up. I'm in. Oh wow.
I mean, granted, I'm kind of just remembering like the highlight reel, right? But it's like, I mean, you meet so many cool people, and I gotta say with Kevin, I mean, I learned a lot from him, just observing him. Like, guy's very happy-go-lucky, right? I never saw
Not
him.
when Marjorie Taylor Greene's calling for you to resign speakership, but yeah, sorry. I had to throw that joke
I
in
never
there.
saw him like lose his cool, right? He has this
Really?
composure to him, and he's always just sort of cheerful and he. I mean, I was there during some intense things, and he was always just so composed and he's just a nice guy. He's very much like you can't have too many friends, right? He's always meeting people, building relationships, and I never got the sense that he was overly ideological, right? His sense of being a leader was, okay, I got 200 and some members. Where can I get them all on the same page? What can we actually do? It's a very diverse caucus, right? I mean, people say urban, rural, whatever. It's like people in Montana have very different issues than people in Alabama, let alone people in the Philly suburbs and rural Pennsylvania, right? So it's like, what can I do to keep all these people together, right? I mean, the whip, you know where the term whip comes from?
You got to whip the votes.
No, so that's
all
what
right.
you think.
Now I'm going to school. I like this.
No,
I like
dude,
this.
Dude, this is like deep, like esoteric. So it comes from
Hit me.
like fox hunting. And so there were different kinds.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like an old like aristocratic thing that I guess people in Parliament used to do. They used to hunt foxes.
This checks out. Okay.
Yeah, this is crazy.
starting to check out.
And so there were these certain kind of dogs that would run alongside the pack of dogs that were hunting the foxes, and they were called whip dogs because their job to like keep the other dogs.
In line with the party, so you whip.
Right.
I like this.
And
This is a good
that's
story.
That's what that whole thing was. Yeah, you're bringing me back to remembering all this. I used to tell that I used to give tours of the building. Now that's really cool.
Wait, you got to show people around the Capitol?
Yeah. That's what the
so on my TikTok has recently been Mark Wayne Mullen from is it Nebraska, Oklahoma? I don't know where he's from. He's a senator, and he's like taking people around the Capitol, and like he went up. One of his videos was like the back halls of the Library of Congress.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is like insane. Yeah. But like just to give a tour of the Capitol, like what is that like?
Oh man, I mean,
because that's like a big responsibility.
Not when you've done it a bunch of times, right? I mean, you sure know what you're
it's
doing.
Like, yeah, it's normal Tuesday.
I like to believe that I could still just walk in and do it because I did it so many times. And you have your like little fun facts. I mean, there's the whisper spot, right, where in what was the Senate, there's this area where like just the nature of the building, if you like whisper here, people can hear it standing in this other place.
Oh,
which
wow.
is really cool. There's a couch, and I've never actually physically seen it because it's in the Congressional Women's Study Room. So there's only women allowed in there. But apparently it's a couch where President John Quincy Adams died. So he went back into the Congress.
Lola, you got to run for federal government. You got to get in there, and I got to see this damn couch. I have to see this damn couch.
So I've never seen it, but so he actually a crazy life. I mean, he was, his father was the president. He's 14 years old. He becomes like the assistant to the ambassador. He's going to Russia. He's this polyglot. He speaks all these languages. I mean, guys like genius IQ. Eventually becomes one of our best secretaries of state, I would argue, with James Monroe. Then becomes the president of the United States, and that didn't necessarily work out as well as it could have. But then after leaving office as president, he came back as a member of the Congress. He was in the House of Representatives, and he was basically a single issue guy on slavery is a moral aberration and needs to end. And he spent, the last, however many years of his life really fighting against the expansion of slavery and the institution of slavery in the United States Congress until he literally died in the building.
That's crazy.
His last term, this is the last thing I'll say on President John Quincy Adams, unless you want to get more into him, which I'm also happy to do. But his last term, he served with a very young freshman member from Illinois. And he kind of was a little bit like a mentor, and this young member really looked up to him. And that was Abraham Lincoln. So they just served together in Congress.
Whoa.
And so some people think, some historians speculate, that John Quincy Adams was the only American who personally knew both Abraham Lincoln and George Washington.
Yeah, because he was born an American. He wasn't. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is insane. Wait, to think about this. That's crazy. So not only did he meet the founder of the country, but he met the man who brought us back together.
Yep.
And he mentored him.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. Okay, John Quincy Adams might go down as the greatest president of all time for that, honestly.
At least one of the greatest Americans of all time.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Oh, man, there's like so much. I mean, kind of going back to, I guess we'll kind of go back to more serious. Governor Shapiro, I kind of want to go about like what is that relationship like as a, I mean, you're probably not considered a freshman senator anymore, but like as a young member of the state Senate, like what does that relationship look like? I mean, obviously he was in your district today. You said you met him, so like what does a normal conversation like that look like? What does your relationship look like?
Well, I've only really had a few interactions with him.
Okay.
I mean, when I first got sworn in, I went to this thing with him, and we talked for a little bit. We both went to Georgetown, and I think he talked about something about us being kind of similar in in terms of having worked in Congress and that kind of thing, and so friendly. In the Senate, we're more close with the Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis, because he is the president of the Senate, right? So he presides over the Senate. We see him a lot. I would like to see relationships improve, with the executive branch, right? It's different branches of government. I don't want to speak, because you talk about the relationship. I don't want to talk about anything he really says, because it's his. Yeah. But
completely understand that.
I think there's a lot that we can do together, and I want to see the temperature sort of come down, right? And I think there's a lot of room for collaboration and for working together. And there's a lot of things where it's hey, I like the thing you're trying to do, but let's talk about how you do it, right? And let's have that conversation. So I like to see more of that. I mean, Ed Rendell used to take people out to Phillies games and that kind of thing. But I mean, you have to respect, the governor's, work ethic. He travels, he's everywhere. He has a level of discipline to him. So I'll put it this way. I'll phrase it this way. I hope to see more collaboration between the executive and the legislature in this year. Right. I'm really, really hoping to see that. And I think the governor really actually, this week saying hey, we're going to meet tomorrow. Right. I invited the leaders out tomorrow. And I think it's a tacit acknowledgement that, the budget process last year going on for so long was not acceptable. Right. And by him saying that start now is him taking some level of responsibility. Right. And saying look, there's five people at the table. Right. The majority of the House, the majority of the Senate, the minority of the House, the minority of the Senate, and the governor. Right. And to get a budget done, you need 26 Senate votes, you need 102 House votes, and you need a signature from the governor. And there's no budget unless you have at least that. And so I think him saying let's get together tomorrow was him acknowledging it's look, last year wasn't what any of us wanted. Right. And let's try to not do that again. So I'm optimistic that those relationships can improve. And ultimately, too, that's where it's I'm trying to sort of, put my best foot forward on that front.
Yeah. And that's what true leadership looks like, whether it be Republicans or Democrats, stepping up and saying, maybe it wasn't my fault or maybe it was my fault, but we're still going to take ownership of it and we're going to get crapped on.
Yeah.
And that's refreshing to see that on both sides. I will say this, Pennsylvania state politics is much less of a sport and more of a, how can we come together nowadays? I would say it's starting to become more like that. Whereas Jersey, it's just a sport. And we got some great campaign ads, man. Let me tell you, there are some campaign ads that make you scratch your head and go, okay. But no, and I think you kind of already talked to this point a little bit, but I'm going to kind of ask this is how difficult is it really to work with others? So, for example, there's a Democrat governor, Democratic House, Republican Senate, and I think the Republican Senate, you guys have a seat in the majority or two seats?
It's 27 to 23. And that's
4 seats. Okay, yeah. It's very narrow. It's narrow, right?
Yeah. The House is only a 1 seat.
Or sorry, that's what I'm thinking of. The House is 1 seat. Yeah, sorry. But how difficult is it to work with a Democratic House and a Democratic governor, and how hesitant does it sometimes get, either whether it's yourself or how do they get hesitant because I have to work with Republicans, I guess, or I have to work with Democrats,
Well, I think even just me coming in, right? People are well, what do we do with this, right? We're not used to having a Republican senator in Philly. And there was this kind of feeling people out, right? I would point to my relationship with the mayor, right? And things that we've been able to do together. We talked about housing earlier. I mean, the abatement enabling legislation that got through the Senate has the potential to really transform Philadelphia, to take these vacant office buildings and turn them into homes. Right, to take blighted properties and turn them into homes. I mean, it's one of the most significant things I've been able to actually achieve in a year. But that only happened because I was able to work with Mayor Parker and work with Vince Hughes and work with Jordan Harris, right? And then be Philly's voice and stand up and say, we need this for our city. To turn blight into beauty, to take things that are dilapidated and make them good. I think you need a lot of good faith. Sometimes there's moments where people really question the good faith of other people. And one thing that's nice about the Senate, is we have pretty high standards of decorum. And the debate has to stay on the bill on hand, right? We can't say, they want to do this, but it's because they won't do that. It's the debate must remain on the legislation that's in front of the chamber. And so those rules, I think, really set a certain tone for the Senate. That is just more civil, more collegial. And so in that sense, I've had a really great experience starting out in public life in the Senate, and also learning from so many really distinguished senators who've kind of seen it all, done it all.
Yeah. Man, you know what? I like this because it's just casual. This
Yeah,
is
dude,
actually
this is what you want,
probably
man.
my favorite episode because there's number one. Usually we're on an hour because we're all in between classes.
Yeah,
We're like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, we have this we got to talk about. But this is like,
But this is
because
what-
it's like this is what it's about.
Exactly. This is what politics is supposed to be, right?
This has to be the
This is
this
what
has to be the
politics is supposed to be.
preview. I love this. Wait, hold on. Go ahead.
No, it's literally just people talking about the problems, not claiming to have all the answers. Not just like, I'm not saying, oh, I can fix everything, right? It's like, here's how I'm thinking about things, just open form. Like, no one, I really can't stand the like 5-second soundbite culture. I think it's so corrosive to American politics because legislation is not a soundbite. There's all this, this sloganeering and catchphrases. We were talking about earlier, people, public servants cussing to try to, get on TV or something. It's like, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I mean, when you're in public and you're a public figure, conduct yourself like an adult, but we need to create spaces for sense-making institutions, right? Because it's so confusing to people. And what we need to do is open up the breathing room, the space to like really, really have deep discussion, thoughtful discussion, and just sort of be chill with each other, And that's sort of what I think the new politics should look like. Right? It doesn't matter what your perspective is. And there's so many different perspectives just within Philadelphia, right? But let's all show that we're buds and we're trying, and we might not agree on everything, but we're going to find something that we can do together. And if we can create that kind of space and that kind of, it honestly is just like what's needed is like a political vibe shift. Genuinely, it's like a vibe shift. Like this sort of forever war politics that we've been engaged in for a long time, where you hear things, well, 10 years ago, the other guys did this. It's like, there's no other guys. There's one America, right? It's not this, you did this and you did that. It's like, no, it's like, we all have a responsibility to the people. That's chill out. Let's learn about each other. Let's listen to each other. Let's let people flesh out their ideas. And if we conduct politics that way, I think we're going to have better governance outcomes. Let's at least try it, right? Let's try a different vibe and see if it works.
Are you sure you didn't read like my summer research or like listen to our first episode? Are you sure? Because
I was looking for it.
Like genuinely like this is like the purpose of this is we like politics has become this toxic game of like he said, she said, and how can I get myself out there and make myself president in the shortest amount of time with like it doesn't work. Like it's refreshing to hear someone say exactly what you said, that politics is just human connection. Like the first thing you learn, I mean, I'm a flex on or at least flex the Widener political science department, is like the first thing that our professors say to us day one starting is, one, you're never going to know my politics because my politics are irrelevant, and two, they give you the dumbest down definition of political science itself. Political science is the study of who gets what, when they get it, and how they get it. So when you remove that and you dumb it down even more, it's how do humans interact with each other, the governed and the governed. Right? Sorry, the governing and the governed. And how do they interact? And how do we level the playing field? So to hear somebody who's in elected office say something like that, which I don't think it's crazy to hear someone say that in elected office. I just think it's because we hear so much often of, how can I get a 50-second soundbite or a 30-second soundbite on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC? How can we get it's refreshing to just be like, you know what? No, it's the human connections that we make with people that we meet along the way. And that's exactly what politics is. So that's refreshing. I mean, you've been in there for a year, man. And you're already but it's something that clearly you've been preaching from your campaign. I mean, you got involved with the Temple Young Republicans. I mean, you had guys working for you. I watched the 14-minute documentary. Fantastic. Tell your sister,
cool.
Great job, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, you had people who couldn't even vote for you, working for you, knocking doors, canvassing, because you know what? Hey, I might not be able to vote now, but this is somebody who I can see representing me, right? And our politicians don't consider that. I think today. I don't think they consider us. Instead, they're looking to, okay, how much money can I get from this? Or how much money can APAC give me because we love Israel? Or how much money can ExxonMobil give me because we're going to keep on going with oil drilling? You know, it's refreshing to say, you know what, now how can I help the 17-year-old who can't vote right now but has dreams that he can't chase because certain limitations are in the way? That's what's refreshing. And that's kind of what we work on here, is bringing both sides together to realize at the end of the day, we aren't politics don't define us.
Right.
It goes back to Dr. King. It's the content of our character.
Yes.
And it's how do we push past the facade of politics that we've created today? Like I said, you've been in for a year. What's that been like? What are the highlights of the year? You've got three left on your. How does it work in Pennsylvania? How many more
it's
years
a
you
4-year term.
4-year term. You got 3 left. What's next to the next 3? What's next after 3? Are we going to run again? Are we looking to run for governor, president of the United States? What's next, man?
Well, I mean, just to recap, it's been the probably longest, most challenging, most eventful year of my life. I mean, going from not being in public life really, to being just watched and observed the way you are, and having the level of responsibility. Like you might think after everything I went through, winning was just this euphoria. It was more of this, okay, now it's time to act. Right now, I have this responsibility. Now I have a responsibility to all the people I talked to, all the people whose doors I knocked, all the people I've met. Like now, it's my responsibility to my home. Right. It was a crash course in so many things. I mean, quite literally. I mean, just a year ago, a year and a week ago, my 3rd week in office, we had the plane crash in my district, and then we had the Eagles won the Super Bowl. That was surreal. I learned how to actually move legislation. I got a bill signed into law very quickly. Awesome. The FIFA bill I did, which is just enabling the foreign doctors when they're here, with the World Cup teams to be able to practice in Pennsylvania. Give me maybe a skewed perception of how a bill becomes a law, because that was a little teed up. I had to learn all the people, all the players. I had to get to know everyone, the institution, how it works, how it functions. I mean, it was a constant learning curve. And then just building a certain rhythm of life. I mean, you're working most weekends, going to community events, being out in the neighborhood, figuring out how to sustain that, because it's a marathon, and you have to figure out how to have some level of balance. But I'm the kind of person, like, I want to be everywhere. And I get so much FOMO if I can't be at a community event. And sometimes it's like, it's impossible. Like, there are literally 2 things happening at the same time. I cannot physically go to both. I want to be there so badly. I visited so many of the schools in my district, so I've been to about half of them now. And that goes to what you were saying, which is that just because you're not old enough to vote does not mean that you're not my constituent, and that I'm not your voice, right? And I'm the youngest senator. I'm the youngest member of my caucus, and a lot of times when youth issues show up, they kind of look at me and say, well, how do young people feel about this? And sometimes they come to me with bills that they think that young people would want, and they're wrong. So that's like,
for example,
they're like, oh, Joe, like, you want to do all this AI stuff, right? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I think AI is going to have some bad ramifications to society, but they think because it's new, it's tech, like, oh, you're going to love this, right? They came to me with like an e-scooter bill. I'm like, I don't like e-scooters. I feel like they're kind of like negative aura. Like, I wouldn't.
I love that.
I wouldn't ride one, so I'm not going to do that bill.
Negative aura. That threw me right there. Oh,
I'm sorry, bro.
Listen. As a former offensive lineman turned rugby player, us big boys got a little problem walking around campus. Okay.
Was this a shot at you?
No, I don't have one. I also think they're the dumbest thing. But as a big boy, I could see how it would be useful.
Yeah.
It's not that big, but in this weather, it is. Oh yeah.
Yeah. The scooter boys.
Oh yeah, and most of them are offensive linemen, so I can't.
Okay.
I get it, man. Listen, being 220 plus and having to move from a quarter of a mile ain't easy, and when you got to do it in time.
To surmise though, the first year, I mean, I really feel just almost like battle tested, right? You know what I mean? Like I don't think any I don't want to say it this way, but I pushed incredibly hard to try to get a deal done right on transit. I mean, I was working day in, day out, but it was so behind the scenes because I don't think the phony baloney, press conferences, things, those don't move the needle. If I was out there bashing, the other party or bashing whoever, the governor, these people are like, you got to clap back at him. I'm like, how's that going to help? How's that going to actually help get this done? But when you're taking the heat and you're fighting so hard to actually, accomplish something real, that gives you just a level of like grit, that's different. I mean, I'm not used to being in the newspapers. I'm not used to being on the news and TV. That's a different thing for me. But having gone through that, I think so early, you learn how to really just you kind of grow as a person, right? And I mean, that fight continues, but there'll be other fights and there'll be other things where people are coming at you, and you have to be able to keep your head, and keep cool and have some sort of sternness. When because it's hard for the public to understand everything too as it's happening, and there's political actors who are trying to agitate and do certain things, but then at the end of it, end up accomplishing something pretty real for the city and delivering this tax abatement enabling legislation that has the potential, like, even if I don't accomplish anything else, right, that can change the landscape of Philadelphia for decades to come. And it's very rare for a freshman lawmaker to actually, be in the eye of the storm on a hot button budget issue. It's very rare for a freshman lawmaker to actually accomplish something, I mean, genuinely significant in their first year, in their first term. So I take a step back and I'm like, wow, what a year. I mean, we had high highs, the Super Bowl, we had low lows, challenges like the plane crash. But I'd rather have a first year that you get to experience a little bit of everything, right? And you get to see the summits of what public life can be. You get to see the valleys. You get to see the pain, the intensity, the beauty, the charm, the elegance of the institution. It reshapes you too. I mean, you feel like you grow up 10 years in 1 year in some ways. I mean, I look at like myself a year ago and I'm just like, whoa, I think that's what any challenge is. It's a way to grow. Yeah. To surmise quickly, when I first got there, my first week as a senator-elect, I didn't have a tie on. And a colleague pulls me aside, he's like, dude, where's your tie? I'm like, oh, like, I have to wear one? He's like, absolutely. So he like goes and gives me a tie. It's actually the tie I'm wearing in my official Senate portrait. And a close friend of mine just got a job in the Senate as a staffer, and I saw him on the floor last week. I'm like, bro, where's your tie? Or go back and get your tie. Because it's like you have that level of respect for the institution, once you've been there. But there's no handbook on how to be a senator. Like nobody says, here you go, here's your manual. There's no job training. The only way to become a senator is to actually just go out and do this job. There's no one who can sit you down and say like, all right, we're going to spend the next few hours together and I'll teach you how to be a senator. I can tell you how the legislative process works. I can tell you the ins and outs of it, but there's so much nuance to building these relationships with your colleagues and to working in. You just kind of have to do it to learn it. There's no other way. Yeah. But 1 year of Senate experience is a lot better than zero. I feel just so much. It really transforms you.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be very sobering to go from plane crash to Eagles Super Bowl parade. I mean, like that is literally the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. And I think that's honestly, if I were in your shoes, that would be pretty nice, because then I kind of know what to kind of expect on either end of the spectrum. What's next, man? Like, you got 3 years left. What legislation are we pushing? What's after 3 years? Are we looking to go for governor, state house?
I can. I'm focused on the next 3 weeks, right? I'm focused on what my goals are for March. When the housing committee reconvenes, when we have appropriations meetings in a couple of weeks. I think political leaders, it's good to have a long-term policy vision, right? It's good to be able to think, okay, this is what I think Pennsylvania could be in 20, 30 years. Here's how the decisions I'm making are going to affect like you, right? The people. Here's how I'm thinking about, the next generation, right? Really the current generation, Gen Z, millennials, our outcomes. What can I do to help shape that so we can actually achieve the American dream? You have to think long-term in those ways. You have to think long-term in how to make decisions. And there's so many things the government does that sound like a good idea that aren't, right? Unintended consequences. So being circumspect, like, it's important to think long-term. But in terms of your own, you, like, thinking for you, it's like, for me, I'm just focused on actually doing this job the best I can. What can I do to level up personally, right? Like, even after every meeting, I'm like, okay, I think this was good. But I try to find things like every week that I'm like, next time I'm going to do this better or that better. So my focus really is trying to become honestly, like a great senator, right? And people can do that. I've seen great senators. But to take this job and just do it incredibly well, or do the best I can, and to sort of do it in my own way too, right? To try to show, okay, well, maybe just because it's been done a certain way doesn't mean it has to be done that way. I mean, I don't think a lot of state senators show up at like podcasts from like DMs they got on Instagram.
I was
right?
gonna say, like, I don't. Yeah, I'd like to see somebody. This is an open challenge. I'll issue an open challenge. Any of your colleagues want to come on this show, we will gladly have them. Check your Instagram DMs, man.
Check the DMs.
Check the DMs. Check your emails. We did email the governor's office. We got Dave Sunday in the works, hopefully.
Oh, Dave would be cool.
I would love Dave. I would love to get Dave on here. I want to pick his brain.
Hopefully me going will help. But I'd say this, like, like even for me, like, I mean, I've turned down like a lot of interviews with like legacy media lately because I'm just kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, like when I see things that are new and that are exciting and that reflect my values, I'm like, okay, like if me topping on like helps you guys and helps you build your thing, that's a really good thing. You know what I mean? Like I'm happy to do that. So like, I'm not saying you guys are cooler than the Inquirer, but like
Philly Inquirer, I can't. Oh man. No, but like we said, we really appreciate it. So unfortunately, since none of our episodes are up yet, we're working on that. Check the YouTube. I'll plug our YouTube after this. We always ask our guests. Yeah. I always ask our guests one last question. What's happening? What's going on? So you can take that in the sense of Philly, Northeast. You can take that in the sense of Philadelphia generally, Pennsylvania, the Senate, nationally. What's going on in your personal life? However you want to take it. What is going on, my friend?
Well, I think this is the year where we're really looking at the American experiment 250 years in. And we're saying, okay, what was this project? How are we doing? How can we do it differently? How can we do it better? My hope is that what's happening right now is a moment for actual dynamism, right? For taking a step back and be like, hey, like we're part of this really cool thing. Can we do it maybe in like a cooler way? Can we do this in a way that sort of works, that's sort of accessible to people, that's exciting? Because the Republic only continues when people believe in it. Right? If a preponderance of Gen Z and millennials say we think this thing is just cooked, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. And so we have a moment now where we can say, hey, look at this. Look what this experiment has achieved. Look what we can do together to make it like not just more effective, but like fun, like cool, like exciting. Like politics shouldn't be something that drains you, that exhausts you. It should be something where it's like, wow, this is great to engage in a vigorous competition of ideals and ideas, not the slogans and the silliness, Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm trying to make happen, I suppose. I don't know if that's exactly happening. It's happening in this room, though. So,
yeah. Awesome. Well, Senator Picozzi, we appreciate your time. We don't want to take too much more of it. Wow. Hour 15 minutes. That's a record.
Nice.
That is a record. But no, thank you so much for coming on. Good luck, my friend. And, have a great rest of your session. Absolutely.
Sweet.
Cool. We would once again like to thank Senator Picozzi for joining us here on Pride in Politics. And if any other politicians or public servants would like to come on and talk about the politics of the possible or politics here in Pennsylvania or bridging the political divide, we would be more than happy to have them. I would also be remiss if I did not thank our incredible producers, Ryan Francis and Lola Geyer. On top of that, I have to thank you incredible listeners for thugging it out for the last 90 minutes. This has truly been my favorite episode I've ever done, and it would not have been possible without all of you. So thank you so much, and thank you for listening to Pride in Politics.